The CEO saw a girl on the way home and suddenly stopped his car and moved toward her. In the heart of the city, where glass towers kissed the clouds, a man named Ethan Cole ruled from the top floor. The world called him a visionary. His employees called him Sir. But no one really called him by his name. Ethan's life was measured in numbers, profits, deadlines, percentages. Not moments, not feelings. Every morning, he crossed the same street to his car, ignoring the world outside the tinted windows. But one morning was different. She was barefoot, wrapped in an oversized coat, her hair messy from the wind. Yet her eyes, they were calm, almost peaceful. Ethan's driver stopped as usual, but Ethan didn't get in. For the first time in years, he looked back. Lila wasn't begging. She wasn't shouting. She was drawing. And something about that bothered him. "What is she doing?" he muttered. His driver didn't answer. "You shouldn't be here," he said coldly. "You're blocking the sidewalk." Lila looked up, smiled faintly. "Don't worry. I'm just drawing what I see." Ethan followed her gaze, the sketch of his tower. "That's my building," he said. "Then you must be the man who never looks down," she replied quietly. He left without a word, but that sentence followed him all day. That night, from his penthouse window, he looked down for once. And there she was again. Same corner, no umbrella, drawing under the rain. Something twisted in his chest. A feeling he hadn't known for years. Compassion. Or maybe guilt. For the first time, Ethan Cole didn't see a number or a problem to fix. He saw a human being. And he couldn't look away. The next morning, Ethan couldn't stop thinking about her. The girl in the rain. The sketch. That faint smile that seemed untouched by the city's chaos. He drove the same route. The streets blurred past. But he wasn't thinking about meetings or profits or board reports. And there she was, exactly where she had been. Sketchbook in hand, pencils scattered, oblivious to the world. Ethan stopped his car, unsure why. His driver gave a questioning glance, but Ethan ignored him. "You're back," he said, trying to sound casual, but his voice cracked slightly. Lila looked up. "Do I know you?" she asked, shading her eyes from the sun. He hesitated. "How do you explain that a single glance from a stranger can haunt you?" I saw you yesterday, in the rain, drawing." She tilted her head, curious. And, I don't know why, but I can't stop thinking about it. About you." Lila studied him. Something about the way he spoke, hesitant, human, made her wary but intrigued. "Most people don't notice me," she said quietly. Ethan took a cautious step closer. "I noticed, and he paused. The words felt foreign in his mouth. "I want to know you. Not as a project, not as a problem. Just you." She laughed softly, a sound that cut through the hum of traffic. "You're serious?" "Completely," he said, straightening his jacket, trying to mask the vulnerability in his posture. They sat together on the curb, sharing silence. For a moment, words weren't necessary. The city moved around them, indifferent, but they were present in the same corner of the world. Lila finally spoke. "Why are you really here?" Ethan hesitated. He wasn't used to revealing intentions. He always calculated, planned, controlled. Yet something in her presence dissolved the walls. "I don't know yet," he admitted, "but I want to find out." And that was the beginning. Neither of them knew it yet, but a connection had sparked. Fragile, tentative, human. For Ethan, it was the first time in years he felt something other than ambition. For Lila, it was a reminder that kindness could exist even in towers of glass and steel. And the city watched them, indifferent yet somehow perfect, as two lives began to intersect in ways neither could have imagined. That afternoon, Ethan returned to the small park where Lila often drew. The sunlight filtered through the trees, casting long shadows across the cobblestones. Lila was sitting on her usual bench, sketchbook on her knees, head down, lost in her world of lines and shapes. Ethan approached slowly, careful not to startle her. His presence was both foreign and strangely comforting. "You draw beautifully," he said softly, standing just out of reach. Lila glanced up, eyebrows raised. "Do you always compliment strangers in parks?" "Only the ones I can't forget," he replied, his voice barely above a whisper. For a moment, silence settled between them. The sounds of the city felt miles away. The chatter of pedestrians, the distant hum of traffic, even the flutter of leaves above them faded into the background. "Why are you so interested in me?" she asked, tone playful but cautious. Ethan smiled, a mix of nervousness and sincerity. "Because you're real. And real is rare where I come from." Lila's eyes softened, though she didn't let it show completely. She was used to people being impressed by appearances, wealth, or status, not by the quiet moments that truly define someone. Ethan sat on the bench beside her, careful not to crowd her space. "I'm not here to fix anything. I just want to understand." For the first time in weeks, Lila felt safe sharing a small part of herself. She held up her sketchbook. "These are people I see, places I go, things I imagine." Ethan leaned in slightly, studying the drawings. "You have an incredible way of seeing the world. It's honest." She laughed softly. "You have a way with words too. Dangerous. For someone like me." They talked for hours, sharing fragments of their lives. Him, the burden of expectations and responsibilities. Her, the struggle to survive and create something meaningful. And in that conversation, something unspoken passed between them. A recognition of kindred spirits, of souls who had been overlooked but refused to be broken. As the sun dipped lower, Ethan realized he hadn't checked his phone once. No emails, no calls, just the quiet connection of presence. Lila finally packed her sketchbook, glancing at him. "Will you come back tomorrow?" she asked, voice hopeful but guarded. "I'll be here," he said simply, a promise wrapped in certainty. That evening, walking back through the bustling city streets, Ethan felt lighter than he had in years. Something about her had stirred a part of him he thought had been lost to ambition and wealth. And for Lila, that day left a trace of warmth she hadn't felt in a long time. The realization that someone saw her for more than just survival. The city was still indifferent, still vast, still overwhelming. But for two people in one small park, a bridge had begun to form. The next morning, Ethan couldn't shake the image of Lila sketching under the trees. The city buzzed around him, but it felt muted, distant, irrelevant. He had every reason to be at his office. Meetings, emails, decisions that affected thousands. Yet his feet carried him back to the park. Lila was there again, perched on the same bench, sketchbook open, sunlight falling softly on her face. Today, she looked different. Less guarded, more present, like the city around her had disappeared. "You came back," she said, a mix of surprise and curiosity in her voice. "I promised," he replied simply, offering a faint smile. His hands rested casually in his coat pockets, but his heart raced. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wrapped package. "I saw this and thought of you." Lila tilted her head, unsure how to react. "What is it?" "Open it," he said, voice gentle, patient. Inside was a set of fine sketching pencils, the kind artists treasured, and a small notebook with a soft leather cover. Lila's eyes widened. "You didn't have to." "I wanted to," he replied. "Your art, it deserves to be nurtured, not left to the elements of the city alone." For a moment, the park felt like a world apart, quiet, safe, intimate. Even the distant hum of traffic seemed like background music. Lila traced her fingers over the pencils, feeling their weight, their potential. "I don't know what to say," she murmured. "You don't have to say anything," he said. "Just keep drawing. Let me see the world through your eyes, if you'll let me." She hesitated, then nodded slowly. It wasn't just gratitude. There was trust forming, fragile but present, like the first shoots of spring. They spent the morning together, sharing stories between sketches. He talked about his work, carefully omitting the wealth and power, instead focusing on ideas, challenges, and mistakes. She told him about her life on the streets, the moments of despair and tiny victories, her dreams, and the sketches she hoped might someday tell a story. The connection was subtle, almost invisible, but undeniable. The kind that could grow slowly, imperceptibly, into something far larger. When Ethan finally stood to leave, the sun had climbed higher, painting the park in warm gold. "Tomorrow?" Lila asked quietly. "Tomorrow," he confirmed, a small smile tugging at his lips. For both of them, the day ended with a sense of anticipation. A fragile hope that two worlds, so different and yet so connected, might collide again. The following evening, Ethan found himself standing outside a modest art studio tucked between glass-fronted office buildings. Lila had invited him, almost shyly, to see a few of her completed sketches. The air inside smelled of pencil shavings, old paper, and the faint tang of paint. Canvases leaned against walls, some covered, others revealing cityscapes, faces, and abstract swirls of color. Ethan stepped carefully, taking in every detail, amazed at the depth and emotion conveyed in each piece. I didn't think anyone would care," Lila murmured, watching him quietly. "I care," he said softly. "You see the world differently. These are alive." She blushed, looking down at her feet, the warmth of his words settling in her chest. For a moment, the studio was quiet except for the faint scratch of pencil on paper from a half-finished sketch. Then, hesitantly, Ethan spoke again. "Would you like to show these at a local exhibition? There's a small gallery downtown, a charity fundraiser. You could give your work a real audience." Lila's eyes widened. I don't know. People might judge, or it might not be good enough." "It's not about perfection," Ethan said. "It's about truth, your truth, and people respond to that more than anything else." Slowly, she nodded, the fear giving way to excitement. "Okay, I'll do it." They spent the evening organizing her sketches, discussing lighting, framing, and how to arrange the pieces to best convey her story. Ethan laughed quietly at a doodle of a dog she had drawn on the margin of a page. "This one's my favorite," he said. Lila laughed too, the sound light and genuine, echoing through the studio like music. As the evening wore on, the connection between them grew. Unspoken, delicate, a gentle shift from acquaintance to something deeper. When Ethan finally left, the city was quiet, but inside both of them, a new energy hummed. Anticipation, hope, and the thrilling uncertainty of something beginning. Lila closed the studio door, leaning against it for a moment, heart racing. She whispered softly, almost to herself, Maybe this could be the start of something real." The night of the exhibition arrived, crisp and clear, the city buzzing with energy as people filtered into the gallery. Lila stood near her artwork, hands clasped nervously, eyes darting at each arriving guest. Ethan appeared beside her, calm and composed, his presence grounding her. "You're going to be amazing," he whispered. The gallery lights highlighted the textures of her sketches, pencil strokes, subtle shading, emotions captured in graphite. Guests murmured appreciatively as they moved from piece to piece, pausing, pointing, taking notes, whispering compliments. One elderly woman lingered before a sketch of a rainy street. It's as if I can feel the rain," she said softly. A young man admired a sketch of a child playing. "Such life in the eyes," he commented. Ethan stayed by her side, introducing her to visitors, praising her attention to detail and the stories behind each piece. Her confidence grew with every compliment, the earlier fear melting away. After a while, the gallery owner approached. "We'd love to feature you in a small solo show next month," he said. Lila's breath caught. She looked at Ethan, who simply nodded, a proud, encouraging smile on his face. The room buzzed with energy, wine glasses clinking, light laughter, soft music playing. While Lila finally allowed herself to relax, she realized this was more than recognition. It was validation of her talent, her resilience, her journey. And then, as the evening quieted, Ethan took her aside. "I have an idea," he said, leaning close. "After the exhibition, let's grab a quiet dinner. Just us." Lila hesitated, heart racing. The thought of being alone with him outside of this professional world sent a thrill through her. She nodded, almost shyly. "I'd like that." As the guests began to leave, the gallery emptied, leaving a hushed serenity. Lila and Ethan walked through the quiet streets, the city lights reflecting off wet pavements, talking softly about art, life, and the strange ways paths intersect. That night, Lila felt something shift, the first stirrings of a connection deeper than admiration, of a possibility she hadn't dared imagine. The world felt vast, yet intimate, filled with opportunity and the warmth of shared discovery. And in that moment, she knew her life had changed, not just as an artist, but as someone beginning to truly live. Days after the exhibition, Lila returned to her small studio apartment, the smell of fresh paint and graphite lingering. She set down her bag and noticed a small envelope on her table, marked with neat handwriting. Opening it, she found a note from Ethan. "Dinner tomorrow? Somewhere quiet. I'd love to hear more of your story." Her heart skipped. She had expected congratulations, maybe a call about the exhibition, but not this personal invitation. The next evening, she met Ethan at a small, warm restaurant tucked away from the city's hustle. They were seated in a corner booth, candle flickering between them, soft music playing in the background. "I've been thinking about your work," Ethan said, leaning slightly forward, "about how it captures emotion in such a raw, honest way." Lila blushed. Compliments weren't new, but his sincerity was. They talked about childhood dreams, struggles, small victories, and the moments that had shaped them. Ethan shared stories of his upbringing, of the pressure to succeed, of the loneliness behind boardroom walls. Lila spoke of her family, the sacrifices she'd made, and the nights she'd slept on park benches, wondering if life would ever turn. Each story, each shared memory, built a bridge between them, a fragile trust, a budding intimacy. Ethan reached out, brushing a stray hair from Lila's face. "You've been through so much, yet here you are, stronger than anyone I know." She felt a flutter in her chest. Vulnerability met understanding, admiration met affection. Dessert arrived, but neither noticed. Conversation flowed naturally, laughter punctuating quiet moments. After hours, they walked out into the cool night, streetlights casting soft halos around them. "Thank you for tonight," Lila said quietly, looking at him. "I feel seen, in a way I haven't for a long time." Ethan smiled, voice low and sincere. "You deserve to be seen, Lila. Always." As they parted, a shared hesitation lingered, an unspoken promise that this connection was only beginning. That night, Lila returned to her apartment, heart racing, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the weather outside. Somewhere between sketches and city streets, an unexpected chapter had begun, one of trust, intimacy, and the quiet stirrings of love. The following week, Ethan invited Lila to visit his office, a sleek glass tower in the heart of the city. Lila stepped into the lobby, polished marble floors stretching before her, a subtle hum of energy in the air. An assistant greeted her with a warm smile, showing her the elevator. As they ascended, Lila felt both excitement and trepidation. What was she doing here, in a world so far removed from the streets she'd once known? Ethan met her at the top floor, leading her through glass-walled corridors filled with art, awards, and photographs of philanthropic work. "I want you to see why I do this," he said, opening a door to a quiet, sunlit room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Inside, walls were lined with files, documents, and photographs of families, children, and communities Ethan had helped through his foundation. "These are the people we reach," he explained. "Each story, a life transformed. And each of these lives reminds me why I never stop." Lila's eyes lingered on a photograph of a small girl clutching a stuffed rabbit, her face full of hope despite her circumstances. I don't know what to say," Lila murmured. "This is incredible, overwhelming." Ethan approached, voice gentle. "You've been through so much yourself, Lila. I think that's why I connected with you the first time we met." Lila looked down at her hands, memories of sleeping on benches, of hunger, and fear flashing through her mind. "You survived, and you kept your heart open," Ethan continued. "That's rare. That's why I wanted you to see this. Why I wanted you here." For the first time in years, Lila allowed herself to consider that her past wasn't shameful. It was powerful. Ethan pulled out a folder, slides of his foundation's upcoming projects displayed on a sleek tablet. "I want you to help me with this," he said. "Your insight, your experience. It could change the way we approach these programs." Lila swallowed hard. "Me? But I don't have a degree. I've only ever survived." Ethan shook his head firmly. "Survival is experience. Empathy is education. You have more to give than many people with titles and degrees." Lila looked around the room, at the photos of families, the smiling children, the impact tangible in every corner. I think I can help," she whispered, a quiet determination beginning to replace doubt. Ethan smiled, the first light of partnership forming between them. That evening, as Lila walked home, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. The streets, the soup kitchen, the nights of despair, and now a glimpse of purpose. She realized that sometimes life offers second chances in forms you'd never expect. A hand extended, a note left on a table, an invitation to believe in yourself again. And maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of a life she'd only dreamed of. The next morning, Ethan called Lila to meet him at a quiet cafe, tucked away from the bustling city streets. She arrived early, her coat damp from the morning drizzle, heart racing with anticipation. Ethan was already there, seated at a corner table with a single cup of coffee steaming before him. "Good morning," he said warmly. "I hope you weren't waiting long." She shook her head. "Not at all. I was just thinking." Ethan leaned forward, voice soft. "I wanted to ask you something important, something I hope you'll consider." Lila's stomach fluttered. "What is it?" "I want you to work with me," Ethan said, sliding a folder across the table. "Not as a volunteer, not as a temporary helper, but as part of my foundation team. Officially." Lila opened the folder carefully, scanning documents that outlined roles, responsibilities, and potential projects. I don't know what to say," she murmured. "This is more than I ever imagined." Ethan smiled gently. "You've earned it. Your experiences, your resilience, your heart. They matter more than any degree or resume." Lila felt a wave of emotion crash over her. Relief, pride, and an unexpected surge of hope. I've never had anyone believe in me like this," she admitted softly. Ethan reached out, placing a reassuring hand near hers, careful not to intrude, but offering connection. "Then let me show you what's possible," he said. "We'll start small, learn together, and make an impact. Step by step." Lila nodded, heart swelling with courage. I want to try. I want to make a difference." Ethan's smile broadened. "That's all I needed to hear." Over the next few weeks, Lila immersed herself in her new role, shadowing Ethan, attending meetings, and slowly gaining confidence in her abilities. Each day, the city felt less intimidating and more like a canvas of opportunity, painted with small victories and growing purpose. She remembered the nights she had spent alone, the fear, the hunger, the quiet despair, and marveled at the journey that had led her here. One evening, after finishing a long day of planning a community project, Ethan invited her to the rooftop garden of the office. "Look at this," he said, gesturing toward the horizon where the sun dipped behind the skyline, painting the city in gold and pink. Lila felt a sense of belonging she had never known. Here, she wasn't just surviving. She was thriving, shaping lives, creating hope. "Thank you," she whispered, "for trusting me, for giving me this chance." Ethan placed his hand gently over hers. "No, thank you. You reminded me why I do this, and why we keep going." In that quiet moment, high above the city, Lila realized that life could turn in ways she never expected. That sometimes, trust and compassion create opportunities greater than anything money could buy. And as the first stars appeared, she finally allowed herself to dream, Big, bold, unstoppable dreams. Knowing that this was just the beginning, Lila's first major assignment with Ethan was to coordinate a citywide initiative aimed at providing temporary housing for families experiencing homelessness. She felt a mix of excitement and anxiety. The folder in her hands was thick with plans, contact lists, and logistics, and the weight of responsibility pressed heavily on her shoulders. Ethan noticed her tension and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You've got this. Trust the process, and trust yourself." The project required navigating city bureaucracy, coordinating with shelters, and managing volunteers, many of whom were passionate but untrained. Lila made her first round of calls, each conversation a mixture of hope and resistance. Some shelters welcomed the plan enthusiastically, others hesitated, concerned about space and resources. That evening, she reviewed the schedule at her small apartment, worn couch cushions beneath her, city lights flickering through the window. She reflected on her past, remembering the nights she spent on benches, the hunger, the cold, moments that now gave her insight and empathy to lead the project. The next morning, Lila and Ethan visited the first shelter, walking through hallways lined with children's drawings, donated clothes, and neatly stacked food supplies. Lila introduced herself to staff, explaining the initiative, listening intently to concerns, and offering practical solutions. By mid-afternoon, the first families were being relocated to temporary housing units. Lila supervised volunteers, organized meals, and reassured nervous parents. Exhaustion set in as evening approached. She sat on a low wall outside, watching the last family move in safely, her back aching but heart full. Ethan joined her silently, handing over a bottle of water. "You did well today. More than well, you made a difference." Lila looked at him, gratitude and pride mingling in her gaze. "I never thought I could do something like this." "You're learning fast," Ethan replied, "and you're remembering what matters. That's the most important part." That night, she returned home, exhausted but fulfilled. Each challenge she faced reminded her why she had said yes, why she had trusted Ethan and herself. She pinned a photo on her wall, a group of children smiling in front of the new housing units, a small reminder that her actions created tangible change. Sleep came late, dreams filled with the families she had helped, and with hope for the future she was building, step by step. Just as Lila felt she was gaining momentum, an urgent call came from the city council. Funding for the temporary housing program had been delayed indefinitely. Panic bubbled in her chest. Volunteers were already scheduled. Families had moved in temporarily, and every day without support meant risk for the people depending on her. Ethan arrived moments later, having heard the news from an assistant. His calm demeanor contrasted sharply with Lila's rising anxiety. "We'll figure this out," he said, voice steady. "You've faced challenges before, and this is just another one. Let's make a plan." Lila nodded, though doubt gnawed at her. She spent hours brainstorming solutions, reaching out to private donors, reworking schedules, and negotiating with shelter managers. By mid-afternoon, a volunteer raised a concern. A family had already moved into temporary housing, but the delay in funds meant essential services, heating, meals, and basic supplies, were at risk. Lila took a deep breath, thinking of her own past hardships. She knew the consequences of inaction could be devastating. She reached out to local businesses, pitching the program and appealing to their sense of community responsibility. Some were skeptical, others hesitant, but slowly contributions began to arrive: blankets, food, cleaning supplies. That evening, Lila visited the temporary housing site. Families were inside, some cooking makeshift meals, others checking on children. She walked among them, listening to their concerns, offering comfort, and silently vowing she wouldn't let them down. Ethan arrived, carrying supplies he had collected personally. "We're not out of options yet," he said, helping unload boxes. Exhausted but determined, Lila spent the night organizing volunteers and inventory, ensuring that even with limited resources, the families would be cared for. Alone for a moment, she looked up at the starry sky, reflecting on the irony. Her life had changed from struggling to survive to struggling to save others. Her phone buzzed with messages of encouragement from volunteers and supporters. Small victories, but enough to remind her why she was doing this. That night, sleep came even later, but it was accompanied by a strange satisfaction, the knowledge that she was making a difference, even in chaos. The next morning, Lila arrived at the temporary housing site before sunrise. The streets were quiet, mist curling around street lamps, the city still asleep. Volunteers were already assembling, carrying boxes, setting up cots, and preparing breakfast for the families. Lila walked among them, checking every detail. She noticed a young mother struggling with her toddler and quickly stepped in to help. Ethan arrived with fresh coffee and sandwiches, placing them on a table for the volunteers. Together, they reviewed the updated plan. Rotating volunteers, meal distribution schedules, and priority lists for families most in need. A small miracle happened. One local business had donated enough funds to cover heating for the entire week. Relief swept over Lila. For the first time in days, it felt like a light had pierced the overwhelming darkness. Families began to settle in, children laughing quietly as they unpacked their belongings, mothers and fathers exchanging grateful looks. Lila and Ethan walked through the site, observing, offering small gestures of encouragement, holding hands briefly as a silent acknowledgement of partnership. By midday, the volunteers had adapted seamlessly, moving like a single well-coordinated unit, inspired by Lila's leadership. Lila took a moment to step back, watching a young boy hand a sandwich to his younger sister, and realized the change she had fostered. Ethan approached, holding 2 cups of tea. "Look at them," he said softly. "This is exactly why we keep going." Lila smiled, a mixture of exhaustion and triumph. She had faced chaos, fear, and uncertainty, but this moment felt like victory. That evening, as the last volunteer left and the families settled in for the night, Lila and Ethan sat on the steps of the building, watching city lights twinkle below. "You've changed so many lives," Ethan said quietly, "including mine." Lila laughed softly, shaking her head. "I've just started. There's so much more to do." The setback had tested her, pushed her to the edge, but it had also revealed the strength and resourcefulness she never knew she had. And in that quiet night, she realized challenges were no longer obstacles. They were opportunities to grow, to lead, to inspire. As the stars began to fade with the approaching dawn, Lila felt a surge of hope. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, yes, but also new possibilities. With Ethan by her side, and her vision clear, she knew they could face whatever came next, together. Weeks passed, and Lila's initiative was finally gaining momentum. The mobile unit had become a symbol of hope, rolling through neighborhoods previously untouched by aid. Each stop brought laughter, warm meals, and gratitude. Children waved, parents smiled, and volunteers moved with purpose, energized by the tangible difference they were making. Lila checked the route list, ensuring no family was missed. She paused to note a struggling street corner, marking it for extra attention tomorrow. Ethan pulled up in his car, coffee in hand, a quiet smile on his face. "Ready for the big one?" he asked. Today, they were coordinating a collaborative event with local businesses and sponsors, the largest effort yet to expand their reach citywide. Lila felt a mix of excitement and nerves. She had worked so hard, yet this was the first time she truly felt the weight of leadership. A truck arrived, carrying crates of supplies, blankets, toys, non-perishable food, and hygiene kits. Volunteers cheered at the sight. Ethan stood beside Lila, observing quietly, letting her take the lead. "You've got this," he said softly. Families began to arrive, drawn by flyers and word of mouth. Lila greeted each with warmth, making them feel seen and valued. The local press had come to cover the event. Cameras clicked, microphones were held, but Lila remained focused on the people in front of her. Volunteers coordinated meal stations, hygiene distribution, and a small play area for children. The efficiency was impressive, but Lila's guidance kept everything flowing smoothly. By midday, the event was in full swing. Lila took a moment to stand atop a small platform, surveying the scene. Relief and pride washed over her. One mother approached, tears in her eyes. "You don't know what this means to us," she said, holding her child close. Lila felt her heart swell. Every sleepless night, every setback, had led to this tangible proof that her work mattered. Ethan joined her, handing her a water bottle. "Look around," he said. "You made this happen." The sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The event had surpassed expectations, leaving families fed, happy, and grateful. As the last family departed, Lila and Ethan stood together, surveying the emptied site. Exhaustion mixed with exhilaration in their faces. "This is only the beginning," Lila whispered. Ethan nodded. Together, they knew that the Open Hands project was about to reach heights neither had dared to imagine. That night, as Lila returned to her apartment, she reflected on the journey, the struggles, the failures, and the small moments of grace that had brought her here. She knew tomorrow would bring new challenges, but she also knew that she had the courage, the support, and the vision to face them. And in that quiet moment, she realized something profound. Every small act, every risk taken, every moment of compassion had led to this, making a real, lasting difference in the world. The next morning, Lila arrived at the Open Hands Project headquarters early, her mind buzzing with ideas. Today wasn't just another day of routine, it felt different. Volunteers were already moving, setting up desks, arranging schedules, and preparing supplies for upcoming outreach. Ethan walked in holding a tablet. "Big news," he said, eyes twinkling. Lila raised an eyebrow. "Tell me." A major philanthropist had reached out, offering funding to expand Open Hands into neighboring cities, but there was a catch. They wanted someone to lead the pilot personally. Ethan looked at her steadily. "They want you to lead it. They've heard about your work here." Lila felt her chest tighten. The opportunity was immense, but so was the responsibility. For a moment, she hesitated, doubting herself. "You're ready," Ethan said softly. "We've built something incredible here. Now it's time to show the world what you can do." Lila took a deep breath, thinking back to the train station, the $10, and all the nights of struggle. Every challenge had led her here. She nodded, determination settling in. "Okay, I'll do it," she whispered. The first step was planning. Lila and Ethan sat together, sketching routes, timelines, and staffing requirements for the city expansion. Maps were spread, pins marked neighborhoods, and sticky notes detailed schedules. Lila's hands moved quickly, energized by possibility. Volunteers watched from nearby, inspired by the clarity of her vision and the meticulous planning that made chaos feel orderly. In the afternoon, a local news team arrived, curious about the foundation's rapid growth. Cameras clicked as Lila gave a brief, confident statement. "Our goal is simple," she said. "We want to bring dignity, care, and opportunity to communities often overlooked. Every person deserves to be seen, heard, and supported." Later, as the press left, Ethan pulled Lila aside. "People believe in you," he said, "more than you realize." That evening, Lila walked home, reflecting on the enormity of the task ahead. Expansion meant more logistics, more staff, more responsibility, but also more lives touched. As she entered her apartment, she noticed a small envelope on the table. Inside was a handwritten note from a volunteer she had helped months ago. "Thank you for believing in me when no one else did," it read. "You've changed my life. I can only hope to do the same for others." Lila realized that every effort, every late night, every moment of doubt had created ripples that were now forming waves. She looked out at the skyline, imagining the future, imagining the impact she could make, and felt a surge of purpose she hadn't known before. "Let's do this," she whispered to herself, the words carrying weight and resolve. That night, she slept with a sense of quiet anticipation, knowing tomorrow would mark the first step in a journey that could touch thousands of lives. Every small act, from the $10 to this moment, had led to a single truth. Compassion, courage, and perseverance can change the course of a life. And now, she was ready to change many more. The morning sunlight streamed through the foundation's large windows, painting the walls gold. Lila arrived early, energized by the previous day's progress. Ethan was already there, reviewing spreadsheets and coordinating volunteers. When he saw her, his face broke into a smile. "Ready for the big meeting?" he asked. Lila nodded, though her stomach fluttered with nerves. Today, the board of the foundation would review the pilot expansion plan she had worked on for weeks. As she spoke, presenting her vision, the room fell silent, captivated by her passion and clarity. Ethan watched from the back, pride shining in his eyes. After the presentation, the board applauded. They approved the pilot unanimously. Lila felt a mix of relief, joy, and disbelief. Later, walking through the city streets, Lila and Ethan discussed logistics. "You know," Ethan began, glancing at her, "I've watched you grow from a volunteer into a leader. It's inspiring." Lila's cheeks flushed. "I couldn't have done it without your support." Their hands brushed as they passed a busy crosswalk, sending a jolt of electricity through both of them. That evening, after a long day of planning and scheduling, they sat on the rooftop garden, overlooking the city skyline. "I never imagined I'd find someone who understands the work and the heart behind it," Lila said quietly. Ethan took her hand gently. "And I never imagined meeting someone who could change my perspective on life and love." Silence fell for a moment, filled with unspoken feelings and mutual respect. They laughed softly, breaking the tension, and for the first time, they allowed themselves to imagine a future together, one built on shared purpose and care. Weeks turned into months. The pilot expansion launched successfully, and Lila's leadership became recognized across the city. Ethan stayed by her side, not as a CEO controlling her, but as a partner sharing the journey. One late afternoon, as they packed supplies into the van, Ethan pulled a small envelope from his coat pocket. Inside was a handwritten note. "For every life you touch, my heart follows." Lila looked up, stunned. They embraced, the city around them alive with movement. Yet in that moment, time felt suspended. From struggle and kindness to leadership and love, their story had transformed not only lives but hearts, proof that compassion can lead to unimaginable opportunities. And as they drove the open hands van into the next neighborhood, laughter and hope spilling into the streets, Lila knew. Together, they were unstoppable.